We're just having a few people filter in, and we're going to get started. We have our final Summer of Powerful Learning session. It is coaching toward inquisitive and reflective instruction. We are so happy to have everyone here today, spending a little bit of what's left of your summer with us and gaining some powerful information for our Summer of Powerful Learning series. I'm going to turn it over to the presenters and let them introduce themselves.
Oops. Well, my name is Santos Flores, and I am the Associate Director of Professional Learning. I'm located here in Orlando, Florida, and I welcome everybody. Good morning and good afternoon, depending where you are located. With me, I have my colleague, Nilu, who will present herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Neely Mogaraby. I am also an Associate Director of Professional Learning with the VILS team. I am in Long Beach, California, so on the West Coast. It is morning for me. I am excited to be here with y'all today to talk a little bit about coaching towards inquisitive and reflective instruction. And we have our wonderful moderator, Todd, with us, who introduced us.
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd DeSando. I'm one of the instructional technology trainers on the VILS team. I'm going to be the moderator for today. And before we begin, just a few community agreements. Number one, mute your mic and unmute it to speak if prompted, but always use the chat for if you have comments or questions, we can address them a little bit more easily there. Be mindful and be present. As we said, we realize that we're kind of spending the last little bit of some people's summers together, but remember that we're all here for the same reason and we're all here to just learn. So be present as fully possible as you can. And throughout the entire process, it is a learning process. Be kind to yourself and to others. And I'm going to turn it over to Santos.
Yes, well, like I said, welcome everybody. And today what I wanted to do is kind of share with you an activity that I would like. And there's two ways to have access. We're going to have access to Mentimeter so that you can actually go to the website of Mentimeter and use the code, or you're welcome to use your cell phone and use the barcode to have access to the activity. So the question that I would like to start with is, what are some of the words or phrases or ideas that comes into your mind when you hear the phrase inquisitive and reflective learning? So I'm just going to give you a few seconds for you to have access to it. And I am going to escape here for a second and actually, let's see here. See if I'm able to move things around a little bit. And this is where we have, okay, I'm seeing some folks are actually entering. Great. So we have wondering, curiosity, enthusiasm, verse, question, bringing learning to self. Great. I'll give it a few more seconds. There you go. Students agency. Questions.
I really like saying curiosity here, like having the students really be curious and think, with their own agency about what lessons are about, driving the questioning. I saw questioning.
Project-based learning.
Bringing learning to self. That one's really interesting too. Having the student be the person bringing the learning forward. Love that.
Exactly. Just give it another 30 more seconds to see if anybody will add anything different. All righty. Thank you for sharing some of these ideas. Let me come back to the PowerPoint and let's talk a little bit about research. Before the research, I meant to say, what are the objectives that we have today? We have two objectives. One of them is what we would like to accomplish with experienced strategies and resources for coaching teachers towards creating powerful learning for students through inquiry and reflection. And number two, we would like to have coaches will walk away with questioning techniques and coaching conversation scenarios for how to engage teachers in reflective and inquiry-based instruction. Okay, so those are our two main objectives we would like to accomplish today. In the kind of a research behind, I would like to see if I can have somebody unmute. There are 4 slides that I would like to share. I would like to see if I have 4 volunteers to be able to read and kind of reflect of what does research say about powerful learning, about inquisitive and reflective. Can I have somebody who can able to unmute?
Okay, I'll do it.
Thank you.
A powerful learning must be inquisitive and reflective. Inquiry and reflection are strategies for engagement as well as for enduring learning. They are also critical skills for students' futures. Today, students must be able not to only attain new knowledge, but to also ask questions that lead to new insights. Reflecting on newly developed and prior knowledge allow us to deepen understanding of what and how they have learned.
Yes, thank you, Maria. And the second one that we have here, can I have another volunteer? All right, I'll read this one. All right, so it says here, inquiring support culturally responds teaching practice. When students have the autonomy in asking guided questions as part of their learning, inquiry can be empowering as learners have agency to develop understanding of the world around them. So it's a great opportunity to let those students to kind of reflect and have that participation as well. Let's go to the third one. May I have somebody who would be a volunteer in the third one?
Yeah, Santos. Learning sciences research shows that spacing learning and recall out over time also supports enduring learning and improves memory. When students recall and reflect on prior concepts to synthesize new ideas, learning is deeper and longer lasting.
Yes, so it gives that student that experience of understanding what they have learned and how they can share that as well and it be meaningful. All right, and my last one, if I can have another participant to read the last one.
I can do it, Santos.
Thank you.
Educators must deliberately create space for reflection that is separate from activities of information gathering and knowledge construction. Just a few minutes a week can offer students the opportunity to reflect on their learning and learning process to deepen their understanding of themselves and their world.
That is very critical. That is very critical. And like I said, it's just having those students that opportunity to understand where does this fit into what I am learning from. Okay, so I will then take it over to Nilo.
Thanks, Santos. What I was noticing was a lot of the research really connects back to what folks were saying at that check-in, right? And like curiosity, having the students have that agency and really connect with the world around them. And I think that's something that makes inquiry and reflection so powerful. I know last week's session talked a little bit about teaching towards inquiry and reflection, right? And how to include that in instruction. So what's the point here? Inquiry and reflection are vital to learner understanding and engagement, right? That's really the summary. It's vital for students to understand what they're learning, be able to reflect on it, and really continue that learning, right? And the second one here from an Edtopia article, I really like, the right questions can help make reflection a healthy habit instead of a groan-inducing exercise. I know those of us that have been in the classroom have sometimes experienced this when we go to do a reflection activity or a certain activity with some students who may kind of find it boring or feel like they're not really engaged. And so making sure that you have those right questioning techniques and making sure that students are the center of what you're doing helps to increase that enthusiasm, that engagement with students, and make sure that they have the agency to kind of drive their learning. And so the guiding question we have here for coaches is, how can you as a coach really support teachers in providing that inquisitive and reflective instruction for students? We talked about, how can teachers include inquiry and reflection in their instruction? So now how can you as the coach help to support teachers in including some of these practices in their own teaching, right? And, a lot of times we talk about teachers being the model for that inquiry and reflection. But as the coach, you really have to think about your own questioning, your own reflection, and how you can push teachers to include this in their practice for the benefit of students, kind of being those agents of their learning and experiencing powerful learning in the classroom. We can go to the next slide. So back one. What is the teacher doing here, right? So the teacher is doing that modeling, like I talked about, right? Modeling the right questions, modeling metacognitive strategies, including reflection when they are up at the front of the classroom doing a lesson, asking open-ended, specific, and powerful questions. And this one is important here, making sure that they are open-ended, right? Making sure that they're connecting to the students' world around them. I know one of the quotes that was read was about culturally responsive teaching, right? Making sure that they're relevant, the questions are relevant to students' learning and the world that they live in. Effectively using wait time, and I want to give kudos to Santos for doing that as he was asking for volunteers, right? Modeling that use of wait time, which can get uncomfortable, as we know, in the classroom, but we want to make sure that we're allowing students, especially those that need a little extra processing time, to have the opportunity to participate in the questioning, to participate in the reflection. You really want to make sure that all students have that opportunity and that you're giving adequate time for them to engage in the metacognitive process as they go through their learning. Recording responses and reflections. So this one, especially for our younger students, but even in middle school, high school, having teachers record responses is really helpful so that students sometimes, if they're not recording it themselves, have a way to remember kind of what they've said, what they reflected on, and it gives the teacher an opportunity to reflect themselves, right? So that you as a coach, when you go in and you're talking to your teacher, you can see, okay, this is what students were saying. This is how students were responding. These are the questions students were coming up with, and how can we work from where our students are at? And then lastly, regularly reflecting on their own teaching practices. And that kind of goes in conjunction with that the recording of responses, right? Being able to say, okay, this is what my students are learning. This is what they're saying. How can I, as a teacher, as a professional practitioner, like how can I incorporate some of the things that my students need to help get them to that next step of powerful learning with inquiry and reflection? The student, so what are the students doing? They're connecting their learning to themselves and their world. So again, it comes back to that culturally responsive teaching. It comes back to making it relevant for students. What's going on in their community? What are their interests? How can we make this engaging for them and really make them the agents of their own learning? They're driving the questioning. So this one is really interesting to me because it kind of reminds me of, student, if you at the beginning of a lesson, kind of what do you want to learn about? What questions do you have about this topic that you want to have answered today or that you want to explore today, right? So having students really come up with some of these questions to help keep them engaged throughout the lesson. Describing how the questions are guiding their learning. So this kind of couples inquiry and reflection together, right? So here we have the questions, but also being able to say, how are these questions helping me learn, right? So some of those metacognitive processes, they have to be practiced, right? I was a first grade teacher and we did a lot of metacognition even in first grade, which a lot of times you're like, well, they're 6 years old, right? But they are able to say like, oh, this was what I did to get this answer, right? This was how I was learning. This is the strategy that I used to help me problem solve here, right? So giving those sentence stems also helps a lot with kind of the language for how to describe your thought processes, how to explain what your thinking is. And that goes along with the next one, recognizing and explaining their thought processes. And then lastly, reflecting on their personal goals and learning process. Engaging students in their own goals is really important, as we know, right, in the classroom, making sure that they're invested in what they're doing. So how can we make sure that students are setting their goals, but then also reflecting on that progress, reflecting on how their learning is kind of helping them to achieve those goals. I think that's really important in making sure that students are really invested, right, in their learning, is having them help create their goals, their personal goals, but then also monitoring and reflecting that progress there. And then lastly, the technology. So, we know that there's tons of tools out there. Technology is a tool. It doesn't actually replace the powerful instruction, right? The strategies that you're using in the classroom. So how are we using technology as a tool? You can have students record their video and audio reflections, right? There's a number of apps out there. There's Flipgrid, iMovie, Soundtrap for audio recordings, where students can actually record themselves reflecting on a lesson or assignment. There are tools out there for blogging and creating of portfolios. Digital portfolios are a huge thing now. I know there's, even college applications, some of them require students to have digital portfolios. And oftentimes in those portfolios, it's showcasing their work, but then there's this aspect of reflection there, right? How has this work helped me in my own learning, right? Why did I choose this piece of work, right? Reflecting on our best pieces of work to showcase and kind of showing this is why I chose this piece of work. This is how this piece of work has helped me with my goals. And then lastly, tools for engaging questioning. So going back to that quote about making sure that it's not a groan-inducing exercise, wanting to make questioning fun, right? How can we engage students in that questioning process? There's a number of different, obviously, tools out there. Padlet is one where you can encourage discussion and answering of questions and collaboration among teachers. Pear Deck is another very interactive kind of slide deck tool that you could use. There's Google Forms where you can kind of branch according to the answers to some of those questions. And then Kahoot is a fun quiz-like game. And then I see Mariella in the chat, that was part of my next question. What are some other tools, right, that you all have found to help encourage questioning or reflection? And I know Mariella put in there Canva, right? Canva has great resources. Anybody have, if you'd like to drop in the chat, any other tools that you've used that you feel help encourage questioning, but also reflection? We've got Adobe Spark. Awesome. Any others? I'll use some wait time here to see if anything else sparks your interest or thoughts on tools for questioning and or reflection in the classroom. Awesome. Mentimeter. Yes, we use that at the beginning, right? Helping students to either, answer some questions, to reflect on their learning, or to even showcase what they've learned. Yep, Flipgrid. I do love Flipgrid also because students get to hear themselves and see themselves talking. And I think that helps a lot too with communication skills as well. All right, thank you. Oh, I got another one, Jamboard. Yes, Google Jamboard is a great resource as well. I know that Jamboard has a limit on how many folks can enter at once, but normally for a student classroom, that totally works, right? Using those Google Jamboards to have students kind of come together, reflect, add questions, right? What do you want to learn about? Driving that questioning there, it can be a great tool for doing that. Thank you for engaging in that. So we're going to do a real quick check-in here. So how are we doing? In the chat, I'd love it if you could put a 1, 2, or 3. 1 being I'm unclear about inquisitive and reflective learning. 2 being I understand the purpose of inquisitive and reflective learning. And 3 being I can explain inquisitive and reflective learning to others. All right. Seeing lots of 2s in the chat. Excellent. It's a good place to be. We're hopeful that our next kind of activity piece will help to kind of push you towards that 3, where you can kind of explain, okay, this is why inquisitive and reflective learning is so important in the classroom. All right, thank you. We'll go to the next slide. All right. So we are going to have kind of a participation activity here, and it is going to be collaborative. So please stay on as we go into breakout rooms, because your partner is going to want to hear from you and learn from you. And oftentimes we have found that the most successful, right, sessions are when you're able to kind of connect and talk to each other, collaborate with each other, and really learn from each other, because that's what we're here to do. We have a lot of great experience in this room, and so we'd love it if you all could share with each other some of these strategies. And so I'm going to kind of review the instructions for the breakout rooms. So we have a slide deck here, and Santos, if you could click on the slide deck. We've got some really great resources to share on how to coach teachers towards this powerful and inquiry and reflective learning. So the instructions are, so the first piece of it is an independent activity, right? So you're going to just explore some of these resources that we have, independently reviewing these coaching resources and thinking about that guiding question. How can you coach teachers to include more inquiry and reflection in their instruction, right? So Santos, if you could go to the next slide on that. So if I am in a group, if I'm in group number 1, I'm going to go to slide 2 here, and you'll see that the resource review has linked there 5 different resources for you to look through and kind of explore at your own pace. There are some sentence stems. There is a planning document that has a really amazing look-fors in terms of powerful learning for students. And there are some, reflection strategies and conversation starters there that you can kind of review and kind of look at. Then you're going to come into a role play activity. And so what we have there is a lesson plan and a teacher persona. So what's going to happen is you and your partner are going to each choose a role. One person will be the teacher and one person will be the coach. And you are going to practice a coaching conversation, pretending that the teacher has created this lesson plan. Maybe, in this case, a struggling new teacher. How are you as the coach going to use some of these resources, some of these coaching sentence stems and questions to help this teacher include more inquiry and reflection in their lesson, right? So how can we get this teacher to kind of think about where are areas to include some more strategies for reflection and questioning for the students? It could be as simple as at the end of the lesson, doing a Flipgrid reflection, right? It could be something like, at the beginning, having students kind of drive questioning. But you want to think about, in this role as a coach, how are you really guiding the teacher to understand the importance of that inquiry and reflection? Once you've completed the role play, it should take about 10 minutes. Then you're going to go back to the feedback box here, and you're going to give each other feedback. As the coach, I felt, like I appreciated this about you as the teacher, and vice versa. Like as the teacher, I really appreciated when you as the coach asked me these kind of questions, right? And so we have a couple of, completion status side on the side here so that we can kind of keep track of how you all are doing. So once you've gone into your breakout rooms and you've assigned a timekeeper and a scribe, the scribe will actually move over the blocks at the top into the completed status once you're done. So after you've completed your resource review, thank you, Santos, you'll grab the slide and you'll move it down into completed there. And that would tell us, okay, we've completed the resource review. Okay, we've completed the role play. If you need any help at all, at the bottom, there is a bucket there that you can just fill in with red. If you go to the paint bucket at the top, you can fill it with red, and Santos or I will be happy to join your breakout room and answer any questions you have. That was a lot of directions. I understand that. So I want to take a moment and reiterate that the directions for the entire breakout room are on the first slide. Okay, so on that first slide, you will see all of the directions that I just reviewed. And they're also somewhat included in your slide as well, in your collaborative slide. So if I am in group number 1, I am going to be writing on slide number 2 because the first slide is direction. Okay, so I'm going to take a second before we open up those breakout rooms and see if there's any questions before we send you off to work with a partner. All right. We'll also be in this room to help answer any questions you all have. But with that, Todd, I think we can open the breakout rooms for you all. Welcome back. We're just waiting on a few more folks, but we hope that you had a successful conversation in your breakout rooms. What we'd love to do is just kind of do a little modeling of that debrief, reflection, processing moment, and ask if anyone would like to unmute or in the chat, maybe share out something that you learned or something that you were excited about trying in the process, maybe something you appreciated about the person you were working with or people you were working with, or any really aha moment or moment of reflection from the breakout rooms or resources. We'd love to hear from you. So you can come off mute. Oh, yep, I heard somebody. Someone's hands up. Go ahead. You're under iPhone for me, so.
That's me. That's me, Kim Scott from New Jersey. I want to say that I worked with two phenomenal people. One was from Miami and one was from Houston. And we talked about so many different things concerning education, concerning the classroom, getting students involved, making students feel valued, valuing their opinion, helping students explore and expand their horizon. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, and kudos to your group.
Yeah.
It sounds like a wonderful conversation. I wish I was in the room.
It was phenomenal. It was fantastic. Yes, it was.
Oh, lovely. Thank you for sharing. I have in the chat also, it was great to learn and compare different strategies to use in the classroom. That's awesome. Anybody else? Maybe one more?
One thing that I comment on was the fact that you guys had on the left-hand side where you had like the questions and the prompts that you would ask the students questions and things like that. That's something that we do all the time for every subject. You know, I may say, well, I agree with what Kim said about so-and-so going there, but I'd like to add to it. And then they would expound on it. And then someone else might come back and say, well, you know, I can appreciate Kim giving that comment, but I don't agree with her because it said that Peter was over in the valley. Peter wasn't in the mountain, so I don't understand that. But we respect everybody's opinion and it gives everybody an opportunity to participate. So it works well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for that feedback, because I think those sentence stems and kind of helping to guide and frame the way that you can have these conversations is so helpful for students. Even for me, right, as an adult, it's so helpful when you have like an idea of what the expectations are, what or how to explain these processes or these thinking routines. So I so appreciate hearing that feedback. Thank you. All right, so with that, I think we've only got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to pass it over to Todd to help close us out here.
All right, everybody. Thank you again for attending our session. I'm going to drop into the chat the link to our survey for today. And this, I mean, we do read each and every one of these, so it does help us make these sessions better and tailor them a little bit more, and helps us to help you more. So feel free to fill out that survey. It also logs your attendance for today. And if during the filling out of the survey, you request a certificate of completion, that'll be sent to you via email as well. Also, I'm going to drop into the chat the link for the VILS HQ, which is at verizon.com/learning. This has a ton of resources, lesson plans, access to AR and VR apps, professional learning resources. It's fantastic. So if you get a chance, please check that out as well. And then last, we have just a note of support from Verizon. Verizon employees are excited to support VILS districts and schools with rollout events, STEM fairs, career days, or other volunteer needs. And they have provided a form there if you want to request Verizon support for any one of those activities or of the like. And they do request that the earlier that you fill it out and submit it, the more of a likelihood that Verizon is able to fulfill the request. So if it's something that you have coming up, you have a career day that you know is going to happen in, October, try to get that in and have Verizon help you. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. Thank you to our presenters. And thank you to all of you for spending a little bit of your summer with us. And we will see you during our next series. Have a great one, guys.